Hey, this is Haley.
This is Heather.
And you're watching the Dunnit Sisters, a Kansas City true crime podcast.
This episode is on the unsolved murder of Alan Ray Thompson. Alan and his mom are getting ready to go get some school supplies when a gunman shot Alan in front of his mom and killed him on January 2nd, 1970. Every case is solvable, and we truly need your help with this one. Alan's parents are now deceased, and his older sister Nancy is doing everything she can to keep the story out there. She reached out to us to help her get the story out. So please listen to Nancy talk about Alan and what happened on that day in January.
He was, he was just a regular kid as far as being sweet and lovely. And I am the oldest, so I was a few years older than he was. So he was actually closer with my youngest sister. They were just 6 years apart. And so she idolized him. He was her savior, big brother. He to cheer her up if we picked on her too much, being the youngest. He would make sock puppets for her, and that's a really fond memory that she has of him. So I had already graduated high school because we all of the Sibs went to the same high school, Westport High School. So I had already graduated. I was 3 years older than he was, and I was actually married at the time. He was enrolled in ROTC, and that was in preparation for him to join the service and the armed forces. And he also, when he finished that, he hoped to be an engineer. So he had big plans for his future. And he was a thoughtful guy, and he was, although I say he was just an average kid, he was 6'4" at 16, right? So he was still living at home with my mom. My folks were divorced, so but my dad didn't live too far from the family. I don't know when this happened. It was like our world was rocked. And both my parents have passed, and they passed pretty young, and they never got over it. And Alan was well liked in school. He had a lot of friends, and I learned that when Robert posted one of the flyers that he periodically does for cold cases or other murder victims, and he posted it on the Westport Facebook page. And so there were a lot of nice comments and heartwarming comments for me to see how some people remembered him.
So I know you weren't there when it happened. If you don't mind, tell us.
From my perspective.
Yes.
Right. Well, it was January 2nd, so it was bitter cold, Kansas City, So I was married. I was sitting at home watching the news. I had a girlfriend there. My husband had run out for an errand of some sort, and she and I are just chatting, and out at the corner of my the ear, I hear the last 2 digits of my mom's address and the street, on Forest, 37th and Forest. So I decided, I tried to call my mom, and the line was busy. So I called her place where she had been working that night, because this happened at 9 p.m. at night. She said, honey, don't you know, or haven't you heard? And so I don't know if she, that made me panic. And I don't know if she told me, or if I finally got a hold, I did get a hold of my mom, and she told me what happened. And so my husband and I went over there, and the police had already left. My mom was just, a shred of her. She was just shredded, basically, because this happened in front of her. They had planned to go shopping because he needed something for school supplies or school or something, and so he was outside uh, trying to unfreeze the car door lock, and of course that had the dome light on, and this was a very safe neighborhood to from what I can remember. We never had a concern about things happening. It was a family neighborhood. Across the street was a Catholic high school, Lilith High School. I don't know if you remember that. And two doors further down the street was kind of a rectory for the nuns and the priests and whatever other religious things that they might have done. So, it was, and on the other side of us was a family, a very large family. So it was a family street. But because it was late at night and cold, there really wasn't a lot of activity going on in the neighborhood. And what we can determine is that it was just an opportunity. This car drove by. They were looking for, something, and they saw an opportunity. They thought my mom was alone because with the dome light on, they only saw her. So they thought, oh, well, let's just, park the car down the street, and they came up. Yeah, we think that this car drove by and just randomly saw my mom.
Okay.
But they never found the weapon. And they parked further down the street, which is why it seemed like it caught my mom and my brother by surprise, that they just were coming up, from the other end of the block. So somebody was driving the car, obviously, and at least two people came up to rob my mom. And then they were surprised to find my brother there. They started talking to my brother, and my mom heard them talking. And all of a sudden, she saw a head come in to the passenger seat, because the car door was open. So somebody tried to come in, and they were trying to rob her purse. And so she started to, resist. And then she heard my brother say, "Don't, Mom, they have a gun at my neck." Or gun on me or whatever. And so she started to say, "Just wait, wait." And she was getting out of the car. And as she was getting out of the car, they shot him. And he died on the scene in front of my mom and ran off. They did talk to three guys, and unfortunately, they all denied it, and they couldn't contribute to anything, didn't know anything. And years later, I asked a private investigator. I did get a copy of the police report years later, and in that, it had their three names. But they weren't suspects, and they weren't persons of interest. They were just three guys that they had picked up because they were, since this was a purse snatching, initially starting out like that, that's where they went first to look at what was happening in the neighborhood. And so Forest is, I'm sure Forest is right off Troost, 37th and Troost. And so I don't know what was happening on that side. We didn't know about the purse snatchings or the house where they would go dump the purses. And that's where they started there, and how they found the three guys, because they did have criminal records. No, they weren't angels, but they did have criminal records, and that's really the story. My mom did not share any information that I can remember about the investigation. What the information I got was basically from the police report years ago. she moved in with my sister. I have a sister that's a year younger than me. She just never spoke about it after she moved in with my sister and her husband. Because we did move out. We had to move her out of the house where we were living, obviously, and so she moved in with them because she, felt safer. I tell you, over the years, my mom never ever talked about that night. Over the years, it was 24 years before I got up the courage to call. There wasn't any Crime Stoppers at that time. Over the years, I've tried to get attention to his case. I started at 24 years and contacted the Kansas City Star and said, hey, this is going to be a 25-year-old case pretty soon. Would you do a story? And initially, the journalist said he would, but he'd have to present it to the editor. And the editor declined to run the story at 25 years. And so the next year, Mark Morris was the journalist's name, and he said they had switched editors, and that editor said, well, this is an interesting story. Why didn't they run it at 25 years? So as 26 years, at least I got some attention, right? So the story was out there. I really wished it would have been more about the story, but it was more about the remaining family, my sisters and I, with just how we fared, what we were doing now, and that kind of thing. But and then yes, I was living in Tampa one day, and I thought, well, let me just see if Kansas City has a cold case squad, and so I made the call, and I got a really nice officer who took down a lot of information and gave me the number of the cold case. And he said they had just started, and it was a department of one, him. Right. And so nothing really happened. As I waited to see what could happen, I would call periodically, and one call I got was, hey, Nancy, I'm being transferred, and so I won't be handling this case anymore. And so it was kind of left at that. And as the 50-year mark approached, I contacted the Star again, got a really nice guy. His name is Glenn. He couldn't push it to the editor. Once again, the editor at the time said, well, his question was, or attitude was, if there's nothing new to the story, then we're not going to run it. So they chose not to run it. And that's how I ended up calling Crime Stoppers, just out of the blue. And I got a really nice detective who has since retired. And at the time, they had gotten, the Kansas City Police Department raised the Crime Stoppers reward to up to $25,000. That's when that happened. So that's where we are. I have tried a number of groups. I ran across Mama on a Mission, and when I ran across her, she was saying that she had some spots open up on her spreadsheet, her bulletin where she has all the pictures of people, and she said that she had some spots open and that she would put Alan's on there, and she did, and it's still on there today. And of course, Robert did a few things with Corey's network, with his networking. We just never got any justice, just because it was, it's been, now it's going to be 52 years.
Right.
Or it is 52 years.
52 years, yes.
Yeah, it'll be 53. All I can hope for is keeping it out there, and with, believe you me, I've really shaken about every tree. I'm sure you've heard of the VDOC Society. It's retired police officers that work on cases, volunteer their time, and I've tried twice, presented my brother's case twice to them, and they have to get cooperation from the Kansas City Police Department, and both times the Kansas City chief said that they're not gonna, there's nothing that they can do. And actually, they refused to allow the VDOC Society to, help on the case. And Sergeant Caldwell, you know him?
Yes.
Yes, this was he was helpful in getting my brother's picture and a little information on the unsolved cases page of the Kansas Police Department. So he was helpful with that. Sergeant Caldwell did go to the warehouse and he had his team examine all the evidence again for touch DNA. And I guess the last time that it ran, when the Fox news people did that interview in 2019, they did get a few tips. Yeah, we really miss our brother. We didn't get to grow up with him, and so it's really difficult. So, I feel like sometimes I'm in competition with the others of more recent times, and I'm thrilled when they can solve a case. And even Project Cold Case has also been successful in solving some cases. But, some of these older cases that don't have a lot to go on, it'll take, I think, like the sergeant said, a deathbed confession.
First of all, these are my thoughts, and I'm not speaking. I'm certainly not speaking for Nancy, but the way I feel is that when a person reaches out for help, I feel like it's our duty as compassionate human beings to want to help each other. And when Nancy reached out to the Kansas City Star and asked them to do an article on the 25th anniversary of her brother's death, and they didn't, it just bothers me, because that's, the family members are the biggest advocates for loved ones, and when you're asking for help, and I feel like that's what they're supposed to do. The media should want to help.
I find that with a lot of cases where the media just doesn't, if it doesn't interest them, then they won't
do that. And I just feel like you should look at the big picture and not just what's in it for me. Oh, is anyone going to be interested in that story? Well, it's helping other people. That's how people learn about things. And then when she reached out at the 50th anniversary, and the editor's like, well, is there anything new? No. Well, then we don't want to run it. Well,
but it'd be new to a lot of people reading it.
Yeah, obviously.
Because cases are forgotten unless you continuously talk about it or bring it up. Like Nancy's left to carry the torch here.
Right. And I really think that they missed out on that, because there would have been people, still around who knew about it. And, but then when she asked, the Kansas City Police if they're willing to get the VIDOC, the retired detectives, and they're like, no. Again, it's like my case, and I don't want anyone else coming in there and helping. And again, I feel like when a family member is wanting help, it's what we should do.
And if something's not being solved, I don't understand why people wouldn't want the extra eyes or the extra help.
Right.
That doesn't make sense.
It doesn't make any sense at all. So we're really asking, please share this so that Nancy can get, justice for her brother.
Because there's not a lot of older people that will be on
YouTube and maybe listening to podcasts. So we're really hoping that someone can remember hearing a story about a 16-year-old high school kid who was who is involved with the ROTC, getting shot back in the 1970s. And he was so tall that, it's possible that they might have thought they were shooting a man. And so, maybe you've heard stories, or maybe your parents or your grandparents heard stories of someone shooting someone who they thought was an older adult and who's really a child, or in the Hyde Park area in the 1970s. He went to Westport High School at the time. That's what it was called. There was a string of purse snatchings that they believed at the time could have possibly be involved in it. But just any murder in the Hyde Park with a child. So please help get this out there. And you can reach out to Crime Stoppers at 816-474-TIPS.
And what's the next show going to be on?
The next episode is going to be on the double homicide in Great Bend, which is where we are actually right now.
Thanks for watching.
Thank you very much. Please share, please like, please subscribe.
Yeah.
Bye.
Do that.